Alright, this book seems to be a favourite amongst murderers at number 10. We have The Catcher in the Rye, which you shouldn't read unless you want to go mad. Oddly, The Catcher in the Rye seemed to inspire two very high-profile shootings, the murder of John Lennon and the attempted murder of Ronald Reagan. John Lennon was shot dead on the 8th of December 1980 by Mark David Chapman. The lone gunman from Texas was found to be obsessed with J.D. Salinger's novel and was found calmly reading it on a curb nearby his attack on Lennon prior to his arrest. It seems he wrote his statement inside the novel too. He felt like if he carried out the assassination, he would become Holden Caulfield, the protagonist of the novel. 5 months later, on March the 30th, 1981, John Hinckley carried out an assassination attempt on the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. It seems that Hinckley's motivation was a weird attempt to win over actress Jodie Foster, whom he had an obsession with. When Hinckley was caught, he was found with a copy of none other than The Catcher in the Rye. Coming in at number 9, we have The Orphan's Story. This story was written by a Malaga monk between 1608 and 1615. Now it's about an orphan from Granada who travelled to the Spanish Empire to seek his fortune. For some reason, the transcript never made it to print, and everyone that seemed to be associated with it died. The manuscript was lost for centuries, some say hidden away because of the curse. Then a string of publishing attempts failed and people just started dying. The book, however, is to be finally published. Belinda Palacios, a Peruvian editor, said that she was regularly warned off the project because of the string of untimely deaths associated with the book. She said it's taken a while because the people who have worked on it died from one strange disease or in car accidents. I think that this is one book that I would steer clear of. Okay, this book may kill you, but not because of demons or devils, but because of cancer. Wait, a book that gives you cancer? Awful. That's right, coming in at number 8, we have Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. When Bradbury's 1953 book about a dystopian future came out, the marketing team had a wise idea. The book is about a group of so-called firemen who burn down the homes and belongings of people who read illegal, non-state approved books. Wouldn't it be cool for the limited edition books to be fireproof? It sure would. The only issue was that people didn't know what was what in the 1950s, and the book was bound with asbestos. You know, the substance that gives you lung cancer. Not great. So while the book in itself is a bit of a scary read, the reality of the book is even scarier. Coming in at number 7, we have the Voynich manuscript. Who knows what is happening and what is contained within the text of the Voynich manuscript? The text is regularly alluded to as the world's most mysterious book. Written in the early 15th century, what the 240-page cryptic text actually says is still a mystery, and it has baffled humans for 600 years. It appears to be written in an unknown language and contains strange illustrations and diagrams. The book has been passed down from emperors and important members of society, eventually falling into the hands of a Polish book dealer. A 2006 book by Nicholas Pelling claims that the text is cursed. Others think that it was secretly dropped on Earth by aliens. There are hopes that Canadian computer scientists may have invented a machine that will be able to decode the enigmatic text. Who knows what we'll discover? Almost as intriguing as what the text said is who or what wrote it. We still don't know. Coming into number 6, we have the Codex Gigas. The Codex is a hefty old chap weighing 165 pounds, so more than me. The text heralds from the 12th century and is referred to as the Devil's Bible. Why? Well, according to the legends, the monk who wrote the text had broken his vow and was due to be walled to death. So what actually happens when somebody's walled to death? Well, it's a bit like being buried alive, but instead you're bricked up in a wall, like in a really small space until you run out of air and die in the wall. Really not ideal. In fact, I feel like it happens in an episode of Jonathan Creek, so if anyone watches that, shout out to you. Anyway, the night before his death, he wanted to create a book on all human knowledge, but he realised that, you know what, that's actually not a long time to write a book. He summoned Lucifer and asked him to finish it for him in exchange for his already damned soul. Apparently this is why there's a picture of the devil in the manuscript. But it's not just any picture, it's a 19-inch tall picture. So, a text written by the devil, surely no good can come from reading it. Coming into number 5, we have the Book of Soyga. The Book of Soyga is an early 16th century treatise on demonology written in Latin. There are only 2 copies of the book in the world, and one was possessed by Elizabethan scholar John Dee, who spent his life trying to interpret the text. Basically, the text is filled with spells and rituals, and it's kinda creepy. He had a pretty good grasp of what was happening, except for the final 36 pages, which he simply couldn't decipher. He and his trusted friend Edward Kelly summoned the spirit Uriel to tell them the meaning of the last pages. Now, the legend says that Uriel possessed Kelly and spoke through him. He claimed that the book came into existence when Adam entered paradise, and that it could only be properly interpreted by Archangel Michael himself. He also said that whoever does decipher the meaning of the final 36 pages will be destined to die 2.5 years after they do so. Coming into number 4, we have the prophecies of Nostradamus. Did Nostradamus curse us, or were his texts a warning? The 16th century French physician wrote a collection of 942 poetic prophecies, many of which have come true. A lot of people think that these quatrains were, like his grave, cursed. If he had the power to curse his grave, why wouldn't his poetry be cursed? Nostradamus famously prophesied the Great Fire of London, the death of King Henry II, the French Revolution, vaccination, the rise of Hitler, the atomic bombs, 9/11 and more. We just don't know what they are yet. Reading these texts may not curse you, but then again, knowledge of a terrible event without the ability to change the outcome must be a great curse indeed. Coming into number 3, we have the Great Omar. The Francis Sangorsky special edition of the Great Omar is for sure cursed. Not only was the original one of the most blinging books around, it seemed to be on the receiving end of some seriously bad juju. Emblazoned with gold leaf, gemstones, and peacock feathers, the original copy of the Great Omar sank on board the Titanic and is lost somewhere in the North Atlantic Ocean. Sangorsky then died just 6 weeks later as he drowned in an accident in the English Channel. A second copy was made by Stanley Bray, recreating the original. Now, that copy was destroyed in the London Blitz. A third copy was then painstakingly recreated by Bray once again, who died just 5 years later. When asked about the book's tragic history, Bray said, "I'm not in the least bit superstitious, even though they do say that the peacock is a symbol of disaster. I'll say." Now, the only surviving copy now lays in the British Library. Visit, if you dare. This isn't a book up next, but it is a poem which really is just kind of a short lyrical book. Now, I'm not sure you're ready for this, but people who read this poem are doomed to die. In at number 2, we have Tomino's Hell. I know that all men must die and all of that, but Tomino's Hell is said to speed the process way up. The poem is a 1919 Japanese work of literature that is cursed, 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 and cursed again. It's supposed to cause death and tragedy if you read it aloud, so just don't do it. The poem tells the story of a young boy's damnation, his sickness as he vomits blood and travels to the blackest of hells. Lovely jubbly. It isn't just Japanese readers who need to be a bit worried. The poem has been translated into English. Now, reading the poem is fine, feel free, even though it is kind of gross. What you don't want to do though is read it aloud in any language, unless, well, just actually don't do it. Finally, at number 1, we have one of the most cursed and spooky books in the entire history of print. We have the Grand Grimoire. The Grand Grimoire is often referred to as the Gospel of Satan or the Red Dragon text, and it is a book of spells believed to possess insane powers, but beyond that, it's said to be one of the most intense and potent occult books in existence. Written in the 16th century, the incantation book tells the reader how to summon the dead, and also how to summon powerful demons. Deeper sections of the book allegedly tell the reader how to do a deal with the devil. The book was said to be written by a man who was possessed by Satan. Now, the original text is so dangerous that it is allegedly held in storage by the Vatican's secret archives. The book is so mysterious and famous that it is frequently referenced in pop culture. Coming in at number 10, we have Real Life Death Notes. Death Note is a Japanese manga series written by Toshimi Oba. I'm really sorry if I pronounced that wrong. The story is about a high school student who comes across a mysterious notebook, the Death Note. He soon finds out that he can use the notebook to kill people by simply writing their names down. This series was adapted into an American movie and it is now on Netflix. Anyway, a lot of teenagers in real life have been inspired by the manga series and the film, and they've started their own Death Note books. There have been countless incidents. For example, in Pingtung County in Taiwan, they saw a string of Death Note inspired issues. In 2015, a middle school student in Pennsylvania was suspended for making his own death notebook and writing the names of 15 students in it. Some people say that the story of Death Note stems back to some truth too, with legends circulating that in ancient Chinese civilizations, the Yellow Emperor had a notebook of death. I actually have to thank one of our subscribers for bringing this next book to my attention. I was reading the comments on the top 10 cursed books part 1, and one of our subscribers highlighted this to me, so thank you Kim Jana for the recommendation. Coming into number 9, we have the Book of the Son of Genus. This is a 13th century grimoire containing Arabic magic spells and provides guidance for the afterlife. The book is all about demons and jinns and evil beings, and despite being a highly influential text in the Arabic and Muslim worlds, it has long been banned in a lot of Islamic cultures for its subject matter. The book allows the reader to communicate with spirits, but that doesn't always mean good spirits. Coming into number 8, we have the Cursed Babylonian Tablets. Babylon was said to be an ancient city in what is present-day Iraq and Syria. The Babylonian era ran from 1895 BCE to around 7 BCE, so hundreds of years. Back in those days, books weren't really a thing. Instead, people read from inscriptions on tablets, so rocks or stone. These tablets were often known to carry a curse. A Babylonian king placed a curse on a set of clay tablets back in the 7th century BCE, having the text inscribed with, "Whosoever shall carry off this tablet, or shall inscribe his name on it side by side with mine own, may Asher and Belet overthrow him in wrath and anger, and may they destroy his name and the prosperity in the land." Bit dramatic. It turns out that actually these tablet curses were very common. Because reading material was hard to find, ancient people often tried safeguarding their property by claiming it was cursed. Basically, it was a ye olde way of making sure little twerps didn't steal your things. Coming into number 7, we have the Babadook Book. There was a time when the book from the 2014 Australian horror movie The Babadook was fiction. The book in the movie is cursed and or haunted, as it is constantly delivered to Amelia and Oscar's home. In the movie, the book depicts the horrifying events that are about to befall the family in a creepy pop-up style. Now, movie lovers have gone one step further and demanded that the illustrator turn the fictional book into a reality. That's right, you can now buy the haunted book for yourself in real life. Following a successful crowdfunding campaign, Insight Editions was chosen to create a limited run of 6,000 books. I think it's a really cool idea, but I'm not sure if I'd want that in my home. If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. So get that book out my house, thanks. Coming in at number 6, we have A Portrait of Marriage by Curiosity Incorporated. I was trying to do some research into lesser known haunted books because I guess only the bigger stuff makes headlines, and I thought, you know what, there must be like, you know, your average bog standard ghost that has chosen to haunt your average bog standard book, and it turns out I was right. I found a video by small and up and coming YouTuber Curiosity Incorporated, and he's an antiques trader. He made a video called Saga of the Haunted Book, who knew books could be so creepy. In this video, he talks about how he bought a bunch of old books off a dealer, and as she left, she basically just turned around and said to him, "Oh, by the way, one of these is haunted." I'm not sure how I would deal with that, like tell me it's haunted before I buy it. The book is called Portrait of a Marriage by Vita Sackville West and Harold Nicholson. It seems that the spirit had an attraction to the book. Now the antiques dealer said, "I certainly wouldn't want to be the guy who got stuck haunting this book." So far though, he hasn't mentioned any further weird goings on. Forget about one spooky book, all of the books in this library are plagued by a pesky spirit. Coming into number 5, we have the Leeds Library Ghost. Leeds, Yorkshire, England, one of my favourite places. Yorkshire is steeped in ancient history, so you'll regularly hear ghost stories coming from this area of the United Kingdom. The Leeds Library dates back to 1768, so it's older than the USA. The ghost haunting the premises is said to be the first ever librarian of the building, Vincent Sternberg. In 1844, the new librarian, James McAllister, came face to face with the ghost of Sternberg as he worked late at night. Now the ghost is said to linger most frequently around the old books, and in 2012, researcher Jeremy Dyson spent 12 hours in the library documenting the hauntings. He uploaded a really interesting and revealing video to YouTube that actually captures some of the ghostly goings on in the building. terrifying. Another investigator, Sean Reynolds, captured a lad moving alongside a bookshelf at the library. Coming in at number 4, we have the Necronomicon Pop-Up nightmare book featuring Cthulhu. Anyone who loves the Evil Dead franchise will know about the fictional Book of the Dead. This Book of the Dead has actually long since been mentioned in literature, possibly first in the 1924 H.P. Lovecraft's The Hound. Either way, Proposition Press have taken it upon themselves to turn the Necronomicon into a truly terrifying pop-up book. The book has 5 pop-up scenes, including pull tabs, and they depict moments from the 5 original Evil Dead stories: the Dunwich Horror, the Shadow Out of Time, the Call of the Cthulhu, At the Mountain of Madness, and the Color Out of Space. Now, they may not actually be cursed like the source material, but I have to say the images will haunt my nightmares forever. Muggles beware at number 3, this grimoire will get you. In 2013, 2 handwritten spiral-bound spellbooks or grimoires were sold for $13,865 in Toronto via abebooks.com. A grimoire is a witch's spellbook and is generally believed that actually the book has to be burned after the death of the witch, or else the book becomes cursed. Now, these grimoires appear to have been written in the 1960s by a high priestess of Wicca called Destra Irene. She was said to be an American witch with English and Swedish ancestry. Now, it's not known what's happened to her, whether she's alive or dead, but the opening pages of both of the texts contained a warning that reads, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." So basically, no muggles allowed. Next up, this depressing book led to a spate of suicides. At number 2, we have The Sorrows of Young Werther. The Sorrows of Young Werther is a best-selling book written by a 25-year-old Wolfgang von Goethe. The book was published in Germany in 1774 and is a semi-autobiographical tale of a failed romance. It's told via letters from a man named Werther to his friend Wilhelm. When Werther finds out that his love has married another man, he borrows 2 pistols and shoots himself, although he botches it, and it takes him a grueling 12 hours to die. The book led to some of the first known examples of copycat suicides. The men would dress in the same clothing as described by Goethe and use a pistol to shoot themselves. Often the book was found at the scene of suicides. Now, after the book's publication and the spate of copycat suicides, sociologists began to suspect that suicide may be culturally contagious. Finally, at number 1, this is one of the most interesting things I learned today. So next up, this one author cursed himself and everyone involved in his book's publication, and he's now the target of a serious Iranian murder plot. What am I talking about? Salman Rushdie and the Curse of the Satanic Verses. Salman Rushdie received a very intense response from the Muslim community for his 4th novel, The Satanic Verses. The book, in fact, garnered such an intense response that a fatwa was ordered. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically a death order, and the current monetary value of it is thought to be over $3 million. This was issued by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the former supreme leader of Iran. Now, Rushdie became the target of the Muslim order, and it's still in place. It wasn't just him either. The Iranian government demanded the death of the author and all of those involved in its publication. While Rushdie wasn't hit, his Japanese translator was stabbed to death in 1991. The Italian translator was also stabbed in July 91, but he survived. The Norwegian publisher, William Nygaard, was shot 3 times in 1993, but survived. And it's thought that the fatwa was behind a deadly fire at a hotel in Turkey in which 35 people died. Salman Rushdie is still alive, but he is still under police protection. Some Muslims out there still want to kill him. It turns out that fatwas can only be retracted by the person that issued them, and Khomeini is dead.
Starting off at number 10, we have The Stand by Stephen King. This book is probably one of those books you should put off reading until after the pandemic is over, whenever that is. We all know Stephen King is quite literally the king of horror, but this novel will hit home way too hard and fill you with ideas of what could have been. The Stand is about an apocalyptic world that fell to a deadly flu-like virus intended to be used as a biological weapon. Already, this sounds a bit familiar, but it gets worse. In this book, King introduces one of his most famous villains, Randall Hall. Once the outbreak takes hold, people start having visions of a benevolent woman and a terrifying dark man who is, of course, plotting to destroy the world. I'll stop now before I add any spoilers. Bear in mind, this book is a commitment. There are two versions, the 400-page one Stephen's publisher forced him to publish, or the 1,200-page unabridged version. Either way, get comfy and leave the light on, because once you start, you won't be able to put this book down. Also, they made a TV show about it, so check that out too. But after you read the book.
In our number 9 spot today, we have The Collector. The Collector is a book that was written in 1963 by John Fowles and is a pretty wild thriller. This book is written from 2 separate perspectives and is about an absolute psycho who kidnaps a young woman who is an art student. He keeps her locked up in the cellar of his farmhouse, and part of the novel is from the point of view of the captor, and the other half is told from the perspective of the woman he has kidnapped. The beginning of the novel is from his point of view, and it details his obsession with the woman and why he has formed this horrible plan. The part from her point of view is detailed through diary entries that she's made rather than regular narration. The whole book is an absolute roller coaster and is extremely interesting. Of course, both characters have quite a few developments over the course of the story, and sometimes things can get extremely dark, but the ending is one that none of us really ever saw coming.
Coming in at number 8, we have The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. Dude, I'm not claustrophobic, and obviously there are tons of Edgar Allan Poe short stories, books we could have used, but damn. We couldn't make this list without featuring him at least once, and this story felt right. Warning, some spoilers ahead, but also, this was written in like 1846, you've had time. The Cask of Amontillado is a story of revenge. Montresor was deeply insulted by his rival, Fortunato, and uses his fondness for sherry to exact his revenge. But the way he does it, and the way the story builds around it, is so skillful. It's so horrible you want to look away, but you can't. Montresor planned everything to a T, even making Fortunato bait himself into his own trap. Fortunato ends up watching Montresor build a wall of thick stone, trapping him inside a deep cellar forever. I think that's what gets me about this story, is that he's watching his own demise and he can't do anything about it. It terrifies me. Oh man, so maybe I am claustrophobic. Maybe. So anyway, check that one out.
In our number 7 spot today, we have Tender is the Flesh. Tender is the Flesh is a dystopian novel that was originally written in Spanish by Agustina Bazterrica. This novel is based in a world where a terrible virus has wiped out all animals except for humans. Instead of living a vegan lifestyle, humans have adapted in a way where cannibalism is now legal. This novel describes the process of breeding and slaughtering humans just for the means of consumption. Humans who are bred for food have their vocal cords removed in order to make them easier to control, and because of the fact that meat meant for human consumption should certainly not be able to speak. The main character of this story is a man named Marcos, and he is a human meat supplier who is a little unsure about these new societal rules, but we also delve into his personal life and the things he has gone through previous to this point. Marcos is divorced, and everything changes when he is given one of the female humans who is meant to help with the production of the human meat. This story is absolutely insane, and while the entire premise is quite dark, the twist this book has is truly unbelievable.
So coming in at number 6, we have 1984 by George Orwell. I mean, duh, we're putting this book on here, of course. It's terrifying. This is the most terrifying love story you will ever read, and you should. This book perfectly illustrates the bone-chilling possibilities that could happen if a government decided to take totalitarianism as far as it could go. It's been banned in the past for its social, sexual, political content, which is hilariously ironic because the whole book is about what happens if censorship goes too far. From the horrors of erasing human beings through unpersoning, persecuting people for thought crimes, the creation of newspeak for abolishing love, all the way to the most gruesome kinds of torture, like, think Game of Thrones. There are images I cannot erase from my mind. I remember knowing that Orwell wrote this as a commentary on Stalinism, but I didn't expect the love story. The two main characters endeavor to commit a small rebellion, which is to simply fall in love, because that's the only thing that they can do to fight this massive establishment. The way Orwell finds ways of igniting the humanity in his readers in order to highlight the terror of the circumstances they're in, it's haunting. The scary element of this book isn't a killer clown or a monster with 18 eyes. Instead, it's absolute power. This book outlines the terror of power in a world that's gone too far, and you won't be the same after you read it.
In our number 5 spot today, we have A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing. A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing is a stream of consciousness novel that was written by Emer McBride. This novel tells the story of a girl growing up in a traditional Irish family and all the struggles that she faces. At a first glance, this might not seem like a horrible thing that should be feared, but this novel goes deep. The writing style is absolutely fantastic and really highlights exactly what this character is going through. We never get a chance to know the name of the girl, but we get to know so much about her long-winded Catholic mother who is cruel, her disabled brother, and her very creepy uncle. Without giving much away, this really does set the scene for what's to come. This book can be hard to read because of the content, but it can also be hard to read because of the writing style. But as you go through, you understand why it is written this way, and it is genius. This book is intense, and while it took Emer 9 years too long to publish it, that really is a testament to how perfect it is.
Coming in at number 4, we have The Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. I can't. This book, I don't want to sleep for weeks. Imagine an alien invasion happens and you can't even see it. Before you know it, everyone you know and love is acting strangely. Soon bodies start piling up, all while more and more people become something you can't explain. Written in 1955, Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Jack Finney is so terrifying, it has sparked 4 movies and paranoid horror literature. The story recounts the horrific experience of a silent invasion where alien beings disguised as plants steal the bodies of living humans while they sleep. The most terrifying part for me was the struggle for the characters to try and stay awake, because if they didn't, the creatures would be right behind them in like what seemed like seconds. Even thinking about it right now makes my heart race. Have you ever tried not falling asleep in math class or an exam? Yeah, imagine that, but your life depends on it. Terrifying. This is the kind of horror book that will make you want to drink like 28 Red Bulls so you never sleep again.
In our number 3 spot today, we have Exquisite Corpse. Exquisite Corpse is a horror novel that was written by Poppy Z. Bright and was published in 1996. The publication for this book was quite a process for Poppy. In 1991, she had a deal with a publishing company to write 3 books. Exquisite Corpse was the final of the 3, and this company refused to publish it due to its violent content. After sending it to multiple other publishing companies, the overwhelming consensus was that the writing was fantastic, but the content was being described as too nihilistic, too extreme, and a bloodbath without justification. Of course, however, the novel did eventually end up being published, and a lot of people now understand the reviews the publishing companies were giving it. While a fantastically written book, this story follows Andrew Compton, who is a convicted serial killer and cannibal who ends up getting a second chance at living life beyond the cell. This story is very raw and absolutely horrifying. The parts of the story I haven't told you are certainly not for the faint of heart.
Coming in at number 2, we have The Troop by Nick Cutter. This next one is Lucy McPhee, Queen of Dark approved. She loves a good scary book, does our Lucy. The Troop is basically Lord of the Flies meets Alien, kind of. I asked her why she thought this book was so scary, and she said, it's scary because the kids have to become adults real damn fast, and no one is there to help them. Also touches on how differently people react in unprecedented circumstances. Some lose their grip on reality. I love that word unprecedented. I've heard it way too many times this year. Essentially, Dr. Tim Riggs takes a group of boys out on a camping trip in Canada when out of nowhere, the troop has to battle a vicious infestation of contagious intestinal worms who starve their hosts. Some go mad and lose their grip on reality. I'll stop there so I don't, spoil everything, but considering this one is Queen of Dark approved, you know why it's on this list.
In our number 1 spot today, we have The Wasp Factory. The Wasp Factory is a novel that was published in 1984 and was written by Ian Banks. This is the first novel that was published from this writer, as the novels he had previously written had not been accepted, and this one was his attempt at writing a more mainstream novel. Well, it worked since it got published, but this novel is anything but mainstream. It follows a psychopathic teenager who is living on a secluded Scottish island. The teenager describes his childhood and the things that went on with some very gruesome details. We read not only about his past, but also the past of his family and how twisted it really is, which also gives us insight into just how wild this guy's mind really is. There are some pretty horrific depictions of violence in this book, which is what led to its mixed reviews. It certainly is a critically acclaimed novel, but it has also been called a work of unparalleled depravity, and that certainly speaks volumes about what exactly goes on.